Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Link right here in the description. You're going to want to be on there during the draft. We'll have the draft channel going. Of course, the transaction channel is always there. NBA Finals channel, got people on that. We sort everything for you. It makes it a lot easier than going on Twitter. It's worth the $2.99. You can cancel at any time. Use the link in the description to bypass the Apple upcharge. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. As we're speaking here, Greg and I are in a tight race for first place. We've got one more game, probably. I don't think we're going to get a game 7 in this one. One more game. What are you up with me? Like by $5? So I got to make that up tonight. Use the code 5 FIVE. You can make your own money. You get $50 to play right away, legal in the state of Florida. And if you want to play MLB, you can do that too. Also get ready for NFL season. PrizePicks.com. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. Impact we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. Today, we're going to talk about Duncan Robinson. And this is one of the things about the NBA business I don't love, because we get to a certain point with players where they become contracts instead of people. And we're going to try to split the difference on this one, because Duncan Robinson's been a really important part of the Heat for the past few years. I mean, he got on me when I said you're still here at Media Day this year, but he has still been here. I mean, it's him, it's Bam. Those are the two longest tenured players on this team, and then it's Tyler. And I joked with him this should be the Duncan Robinson build. It's not going to be the Duncan Robinson build anymore, though, most likely. So what we're going to talk about today is what he means to them as a player, the likelihood that he's not going to be with them next year, and what that means contractually as we're talking about trades with KD. So first, let's start with this part, because as the player, I mean, you're talking about a player who has literally set records, not just Heat records, but NBA records as a shooter. And he was someone who, if you recall, he was like subbed in for Dwayne. I mean, he played with Dwayne, okay? I mean, this is how long we're going back here. And you know, this is a guy who, when he first came up, I don't think anybody really expected him to stick for the long term. Williams College to Michigan, but undrafted. And he's one of the most successful undrafted players of all time. I think, I mean, would you and I agree on this? UD is one, right? I mean, has to be, because.
Yes, just overall impact, absolutely. There's statistical cases to be made for Duncan in certain ways, which is crazy that we've arrived here. And I know that that's probably where you were heading, but UD has to take that number one undrafted spot, because, I mean, his number's up in the rafters.
Okay, but could we make an argument that Duncan is second? I mean, if we look at others, I mean, you've got Caleb Martin came here from another team, right? Contributed to an Eastern Conference Finals championship, Eastern Conference Finals win over Boston. Gabe Vincent was big for them. You go all the way back to Anthony Carter, helped them win a playoff series, became a coach with them. You know, Whiteside was drafted. He came here afterwards, but he was drafted in the second round. So just to clarify on some of these, but they've had a ton of these success stories. Strus is obviously another one. Haywood Highsmith has become another one in recent years. But I mean, going back, is it fairly safe to say he would be two of all these guys we've talked about?
I mean, he's the best shooter in Heat history. And the thing about that is the Heat have had a lot of good shooters come through the building, and for Duncan to be the franchise leader, he's been part of some pretty magical runs that I don't think everybody expected. I would like to remind everybody that the first time you heard about Duncan Robinson was when I tweeted about him
Yes.
at Michigan,
Yes.
and the Heat were looking and were interested in his game back then. And it's just crazy that he's stuck this long. And it's funny that you teed up the pod too with the conversation you had with him where you said you're still here, because I know that you meant it in kind of like an
Yes,
endearing way, and he
I
took it
did.
completely the other way.
Took it
And
totally wrong. Yeah.
it's going to be, I think, obviously, I think fans just want to see the team improve. So it's not going to be as a emotional of an exit as like, you know, a UD or a Dwayne, obviously. But even there's been other guys that have kind of been parts of contending teams that we think about in history, whether it's like the Mario Chalmers of the world or Mike Millers of the world, stuff like that. I think that the Heat fan right now is going to be pretty interested in what goes on with the updates to the roster and how the team gets better. So it's kind of going to be a shame that I think it's going to be a sort of quiet exit for Duncan. Although I would be interested if the best shooter in Heat history gets a tribute video on his way back through. But I am getting ahead of myself. I realize that.
I think he should, actually, if that's the case. I mean, others that we could talk about, I mean, Rodney Magruder, I mean, who else? Kendrick Nunn obviously was very brief. And then I was looking also, Tyler Johnson too is another one who was, I mean, they've had a bunch of these guys, but I think it's fair to say that Duncan is too. In light of that, at this point, okay, and we just did an rank the assets pod, Brady and I did, and it was more about what other teams would want more so than how the Heat would value them. But right now, as we describe Duncan's contract situation, I'm going to ask you this question at the end. Is he more valuable to the Heat right now as a contract than as a player? Because when we start to talk about the contract, this is what could grease the wheels for Durant trade. But also, once they trade him, they may have a serious dearth of shooting. So it's just a question to ponder. But I appreciate Sean Rochester doing this. He reached out to Bobby Marks on this to get specificity on Duncan's contract so we can explain it properly. And it is explained in Off the Floor. So if you subscribe there and you see the host updates, you'll get it before we do it here. So Sean posted here in host updates. I wanted to get clarification on Duncan's contract. I think there's been confusion in the chat in recent days. See below for Bobby Marks' response and breakdown of the options. And of course, the contract notes, this is according to Spotrac, early termination option, deadline 6/29/25. On 25-26, $9.888 million, so roughly $10 million, guaranteed, fully guaranteed 2 days after the 2025 moratorium ends, which means that's July 8th because the moratorium ends on July 6th. So, and then just to this part of it, he messaged Bobby and he said the Heat acquiring team can't pay him $9.8 million, and he stays in the team. If he stays, he gets the full salary. And Bobby responded, yes, it's an early termination that the player has the right to become a free agent. If he doesn't, which is likely, he's guaranteed $9.8 million. The remaining amount is guaranteed if he's on the roster past 7/8. That's July 8th. Considering he's not being bought out and just waived, he can sign with Miami, but doesn't have bird rights. If he's traded, he can't sign with Miami if he's waived by his new team. People should understand that. That's an old rule that goes back to something Boston did with, I believe, Gary Payton way back when. And then your explanation was, so Duncan could just terminate the contract by June 29th, which he probably won't do. Then if he doesn't terminate the deal, Miami then has to make a decision to keep him for 20 or waive him and pay only 10. But then you're talking about $10 million in dead cap. So,
and can I take it a step further? And I failed to mention this on Discord, but I think it's an important part that Miami could consider. And this is a really interesting contract, the way that they crafted it, because they essentially can see if they get something done before the moratorium ends to make the final decision on whether to keep Duncan around for $20 million or to realize some of those savings by waiving him, right? But I think that this is another key thing. They could waive him And I think you could waive and stretch the final amount, so you could save even more money off the book. So I think that that's just something also that we should consider, is that they could waive and stretch the remaining 9.8 over the course of 3 years.
Okay, so now let's take it to Phoenix's side. And Brady and I touched on this a little bit, but since we're going into more depth on this particular contract, the benefit for Phoenix, if they choose this benefit, is that they are above the second apron. Being above the second apron not only is expensive, which Matt Ishbia, the owner, doesn't seem to care about, but it limits you in terms of vehicles that you can use. And one of the things that they can't do is, because they've been over the second apron, is aggregate salaries, and that's kind of bit them a little bit lately. Now they have new front office leadership there. Brian Gregory has been elevated. James Jones seems to have been pushed to the side. Josh Bartelstein is dealing with a whole bunch of issues there. It's not really clear the direction they're looking to go, except that Ishbia has been quoted as saying he's going to be more involved than he was before, which is seemingly impossible. But apparently that's the direction. He's not pulling back. So I guess the question becomes, how valuable is it to them to acquire Duncan? Now they wouldn't. You don't think they would keep Duncan, right? They would acquire him to waive him and get the tax savings, right?
Yes, that's the whole. I feel like as Miami's pitching their offer to Phoenix, it's probably like, look, we can check off a box with a draft pick. We can check off a box with either a useful piece in Andrew Wiggins or a younger player, if one of the young guys were to be included. And then the third box they check, Ethan, is that they provide financial relief, and Phoenix of all teams needs financial relief. And so that's why I really feel like, yeah, there's other teams around the league that could obviously use the financial relief that would be interested. Miami may be just as interested in that financial relief, but Phoenix is one of the unique scenarios where they've been so bad and they're so expensive that you would think that the Duncan contract would be not just any $20 million salary that's getting slotted in there, when you consider that you can kind of waive them and take back a lot of that, so I feel like Phoenix of all teams would value that contract more than just the average team around the league.
And that, to be clear, none of the other teams that we're talking about right now or have been talked about as possible trade partners for Phoenix for one reason or another, whether it's San Antonio, which hasn't seemed that engaged, Houston, which seems like they're trying to get them to pony up more of their better young assets, Minnesota, which they seem to like an offer, but Durant doesn't seem to want to go there, which complicates things in terms of him signing extension. The same seems true of Toronto. All of these teams that we're talking about cannot offer this piece. They can't lessen the load on Phoenix. And this feels to me in some ways like when you're making this offer to Phoenix, you're saying you should want this. You should want to have more flexibility, but the owner may not. And that's the thing. Like, if the owner cares about that, then this becomes more than a sweetener, I think. I think it's significant. But the owner may not care about it. And that's the thing. If he's just about sort of pushing forward with talent, and it's hard. Look, it's hard to make an argument against that because that's what Heat fans want the Heat to do most of the time. And so, but Phoenix just hasn't been operated as well as the Heat typically. And so that's why it's like, okay, this is sort of feels like new owner syndrome a little bit in terms of what the way they're going about it. All right, on the other side of this, I want to talk about the likelihood of this actually taking place, but also, I mean, the very real basketball consequences here. If you get Kevin Durant, like you said, people aren't going to care about it, but they don't have any shooting on this roster right now. So Kevin Durant's a great shooter, but they're going to need more than that if Duncan's included in this trade. So we'll talk about kind of where that goes. Before we do, you know what you need? You need to be able to send money safely, securely, quickly, right? I mean, everybody, you're paying for something, you're out with your friends. He's like, can I Cash App you that? Because nobody's carrying cash these days, right? Making money moves should be easy. That's where there's Cash App. It's fast, safe, and way more personalized than the other apps out there. No extra hoops to jump through, no extra stress. Plus, sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They look out for you if something seems sketchy, or they think you may be sending money to a potential scammer. They'll warn you, make you think twice before you hit send. Don't you wish that you could do that with a trade machine? Like, okay, don't do that. Don't send that first round pick for Rozier. You can even spice up your payments with custom text, stamps, and backgrounds, because why should paying your friend for brunch be so boring? If for whatever insane reason you don't have Cash App, just download it from your phone's app store. Sign up, enter the code on the floor. That's ON the floor, on the floor in your profile. Send $5 to a friend. You get $10 just for getting started. For limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, no catch. Just download Cash App and sign up. Use our exclusive referral code on the floor in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days. You get $10 drop right into your account. You can use that at the Panther Parade once you're on Las Olas this weekend. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Speaking of the Panther Parade, I'm going to have Will Manso on early next week. Someone who also, has been covering the Panthers and then covered the Big Three. We're going to start to have this debate. And right now, I can tell you, Greg, it is polling even. Now, I threw the 70 Dolphins in there and the Canes sort of choose your era. But along with the Heat's Big Three and the current Panthers team, when all is said and done, which will be remembered as the best dynasty down here in South Florida. And right now, the Panthers and Heat both have 40%. So topic I'm going to get into with Will. I think the difference is going to be the Panthers is going to go longer. It's just because they're positioned to go longer. They don't have a LeBron who's leaving. That's basically what's happening. Barkov is signed for like 25 more years. So that's the difference. But Panthers also didn't face the scrutiny that the Big Three Heat didn't have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. And to me, that's what for now has me having the Heat ahead of them. But we'll see where this is in about 4 more parades.
Let's get Panthers give the Panthers credit. And I know I don't talk hockey often. They're really manipulating the salary cap in a great way. Like they have a lot of guys like I was looking at Edmonton's salaries and they've got like 2 guys that make a ton of money and then everybody else is kind of way back. So they can't spend on a goalie. And the Panthers are really well built out salary structure wise. Like their money is spread out well.
Very good hockey analysis. I will tell you, once they get Marchand and Ekblad and Bennett all back on discounts, you're going to see all of Canada burn because they think it's all because of no state tax. And I'm like, okay, see, this is what we could always do in this town. Whenever somebody complains about South Florida having advantages, whether it's no state tax or the beaches or the weather or, the nightlife or whatever, just say, look at the Dolphins. It's not like it helps them, right? So, and as a Dolphin fan, I know you can relate to that. They're always the exception to everything. Marlins, they don't even register at this point. All right, let's get back to the Duncan conversation here. So to get a Durant deal done, it feels fairly certain this contract would need to be included, right? Or do you think there's any way that they could be coaxed into, say, Rozier?
I don't think so.
Who's in the last year of his deal?
Unless the Heat are going to come up off of more draft capital and they're more open-minded to that than I think they are. I don't see that. I think Duncan would be a primary vehicle for the way that they match salaries. Andrew Wiggins seems like another logical fit that I think a lot of people have kind of connected those dots to pull together what Phoenix would want. But even if the Heat do pivot, Ethan, and they have to go in a different direction, and we're going to do another episode about this topic, but just like a sneak peek into it, if DeMar DeRozan becomes a conversation, Sacramento would likely value Duncan's contract in that scenario as well. Like that would be a scenario where they could look to save. And so I just think that the Heat are going to be looking to do business early with all of this because of the very fact that Duncan, there's dates where things are going to need to be finalized. And he could obviously just walk away on 6/29. He has an early termination option. So Duncan Robinson could just not be a trade piece for the Heat by walking away from his contract, but nobody thinks he'll do that. And so I just think because then the 8th is when the Heat have to make their decision on to waive him or not. It's just he's going to be involved in every conversation going forward. And it's a shame that, to your point, as you started the show, he's leaving as kind of just a contract that's making the pieces work in our trade machines versus remembering the fact that he's, the greatest shooter in Heat history.
And he's been around town a lot. I know he actually was at a Panther game. He was mic'd up at one of the Panther games. And, he's been a fixture here to a large degree over the past few years. I don't think he'd walk away from that contract at that point. Although I will say this, it was unusual that he didn't speak to the media on exit interview day. That I can't remember him ever doing that. Maybe there was one time. So there has felt like there's finality here with everything that's going on. But the last part of this, and again, we got more episodes to get to, but we wanted to at least acknowledge this particular part of everything, is that if they do trade him, they got to find shooting. Durant is not enough. Durant and Hero are not enough. They're going to need to find additional shooting. And don't give me Bam and Ware. I mean, at best case scenario, they'll be plus shooters as bigs, but they're not, knocked down.
Can't rely on them.
Knocked down. No, you can't rely on that. So Alec Burks was recently at a junior Heat camp, and I know Ira and Anthony talked to him, and he said his priority is to be here. If he's a minimum deal, you just do it, no brainer, right?
For me, that's a layup. Yeah, you just bring him back. He was nothing but professional. He could not play and then play. Like, he has that ability to sit and then go in the game and figure it out very quickly. And I have seen that this coaching staff, particularly Spoelstra, values that ability. It's why we've seen him go to vets over young players throughout the year. So yeah, Alec Burks at the minimum coming back. If you have to fill roster spots, it makes a ton of sense. Because to your point about Duncan leaving, if you had even Durant and Tyler, you still need like release valve shooting around those guys so that there's space to operate. So you can't just have your volume shooters also be your volume scorers, also be your top shooters. I feel like, maybe Steph and Clay get away with that, but
right.
You got to surround those guys with more than frankly just Alec Burks. That's not enough. So we'll see what other places they'd probably be working with minimums or undrafted contracts, I would think, unless they were to spend a mid-level exception type salary on a shooter, but I don't think they're going in that direction. So they're going to have to probably unearth another gem to kind of slide in here from a shooting perspective. That's kind of what I project forward.
And we don't really know that they have one in the pipeline. Like they didn't have one in the G League this year I know there was some hope about Cole Swider before. Now he's been on like 4 teams since, but you could tell, I thought right away, that he wasn't really an NBA player because it's just defensively, the way that he moved, he was too stiff. I think that, Haywood has become, a passable shooter in these situations, but again, he's not a specialist. Like it's fine to have him on the floor. He's probably going to be left open, and he's had nights where he's made other teams pay, and he's still under contract this year too. And I'm a little bit surprised that his name hasn't come up as a possible sweetener for some of these teams, because I think he's a guy who could help a lot of teams. I think that he would like to keep him. Yeah. But he's on a cheap deal this year, and he's another guy potentially. But yeah, they're going to need shooting, no question about it. Durant, again, is a plus shooter from everywhere on the floor. And I'm not speaking as if they're getting Durant. I'm just saying if they got Durant. Do you see, you mentioned Sacramento, and I'll close with this, because we're going to do a separate episode on DeRozan, our 75th episode on DeRozan over the past 6 years. But remember, Sacramento basically acquired Duncan last summer. The deal fell through. And I've explained this before. And now Duncan's in the last year of the contract. He has more value now than he did last year. And that deal was supposed to be Harrison Barnes for Duncan Robinson, because essentially as part of the DeRozan deal, see, this all comes back together. It's part of the 3-way DeRozan deal, which included Chicago and San Antonio. Kevin Huerter was originally going to be traded to San Antonio, and so Sacramento needed to replace him in their lineup, and so they were going to trade Barnes, but then San Antonio wanted Barnes instead and to keep him, and that's when Sacramento didn't need Duncan anymore. So you're onto something with the Sacramento part of this. Like, if they liked him before, why wouldn't they like him now? To keep him potentially, maybe. We'll see, okay? But also he could create relief there too. So there's different places that Duncan can be sent, but I think the most likely scenario, and I'll let Sean sum this up, because I will say this, our Sean Rochester was like president of the Duncan Robinson fan club when everybody was down on Duncan couple seasons ago. And Duncan says, Sean, even as a Duncan supporter, every outcome with Duncan not in Miami, July 10th, seems like the better option. Not because he's not a good player, but because he's a good contract. And I hate that that's what this becomes, but that's what this becomes. And I do think he would get some kind of a video when he came back. Longevity of time, I think there'd be I think it's warranted. Anyway, for Greg, Ethan, you know that already. Cash App, use the code on the floor, and then also Prize Picks, use the code FIV.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.